to be there and be heard. Stay tuned to KBLA Talk 1580 for more details.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome to Moving Mountain Mondays, where our very special guests, Ernest Krim III and Dr. Teresa Hord Owens, will be leading our program with me for the next 2 hours. I was particularly moved by the previous segment in Tavis's show regarding leadership. There's so much taking place right now. The ground underneath the feet with which we stand has been shaken in just 1 week. I asked the question at the very beginning of my ministry in radio of a number of theologians, including Walter Fluker, Aubrey Hendricks, Robert Franklin, and Bill Howard, why is it that the white community has never produced a Martin Luther King Jr.? And the answer was almost unanimous. White privilege, they said in their own respective ways, and the absence of oppression in their space is incapable of producing a Martin Luther King Jr. We've all held out for a Martin Luther King Jr., but that's not the case. But something fairly extraordinary happened in the spiritual realm of this nation last week that for generations to come, we are not going to be able to ignore. The birth of a kind of civil religion. I could have never imagined that white supremacy and the idea of white minority rights would actually produce its own martyr. And there's no history of togetherness in the theology that undergirds the new religion, the new civil religion in the United States that is largely founded in the tragic events of last week. I'd like us to reflect upon the moment and the thought that Martin Luther King Jr. gave on April 3rd, 1968, just hours before his tragic assassination. Taz, please roll the clip.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Just 24 hours later, Martin Luther King Jr. would be lying on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, having been shot in the neck. In large measure, Martin Luther King Jr. gave thought to the idea that you can kill the clip now. They gave thought to the idea. Dr. King gave thought to the idea of his own finitude and the limitations that existed in his life. There is no evidence that the martyrdom to which the Trump coalition speaks, that the subject of martyrization gave thought to finitude or an inclusive vision of America. There is only the hope that one day, maybe, a person very narrow in their focus might have given consideration that all of us are God's children and all of us have the right to live together, and that this American experiment is the first experiment in human history that we too have the possibility of reaching a promised land together. What I could have never imagined is that as minorities collectively became majorities, they copied our movement for social justice and made it their own. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People is now the National Association for the Continued Advancement of White People. And now they have their own Martin Luther King Jr. martyred for the cause of white minority rights. More on this when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Here is a lesson that leadership must learn, but nobody teaches. Leaders eat last, take credit last, get paid last in startups, but they take responsibility first, make decisions first, accept blame first, face danger first. Leadership isn't about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. It's not about power, it's about service. Most people want the title, but few people want the weight. Our very special guest in this hour is my favorite millennial, Mr. Ernest Krim III, a producer who on our show really needs no introduction. And of course, in our second hour on Moving Mountain Mondays will be Dr. Teresa Ford Owens, the General Minister and President of the Disciples Church. We're so grateful that both of them will be participating with us in this hour. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, Brother Jesse, it's good to be here with you again, especially considering how timely this conversation is.
I'm very grateful that you are here, Ernest, and on the threshold of a new generation of leaders who, well, they knew not Pharaoh, they knew not our king, they knew not the suffering servant, but the idea that Martin Luther King Jr., just 24 hours before his death, shared a broad vision of the possibility of a nation for all Americans. And when you think about the final words that left the thinking and the heart and the mind of Martin Luther King Jr., and you compare them with the final words, the final seconds of the life of the late Mr. Charlie Kirk, whose condolences we continue to extend to him and to his family, because no person on earth deserves what happened to him on that tragic day last week. I think, Ernest, about my father being present on this occasion, the occasion of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., Ralph Abernathy, Andrew Young, and others who were on the balcony that day. I've observed these men and those women who that very traumatic experience changed the trajectory of their lives. It started, quite frankly, a liberation theological tradition in ways that had been martyred that we had never even considered. We're not talking just about the innocent men and women who from the inception of our struggle, but someone who actually offered an inclusive vision of what America could become. And him having been struck down in the context of his nonviolent experiment was indeed one of the world's great tragedies. And when I reflect upon what has happened in the last week and the, if you will, the martyrization of white minority rights in our own country, I am deeply, deeply, deeply troubled about the theological implications and the spiritual implications about our nation. It wasn't just a half a dozen or a dozen people who witnessed that assassination. It was thousands of young people who, for the rest of their lives, will reflect upon that tragic moment and what it meant, and the interpretations of the last words of their martyr. I've even heard some focus groups already talking about that, listening to young people who witnessed that tragic assassination. More than 35,000 inquiries across the country to start Turning Point organization founded by Charlie Kirk. More than 18,000 college applications to form chapters on campuses across our country to form Turning Point organizations. I'm not aware, Mr. Krim, Ernest, if there's ever been an event in African-American history or an event in the history of progressive politics in the United States that created an organizational dynamic that has the potential to change the course of American electoral politics and American electoral history. Mr. Krim, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Your millennial thinking.
You know, when it's one of those moments that, you know, you'll remember where you were, similar to it was the day before 9/11, right? People can always recall where they were on that moment. And as someone who has seen Charlie Kirk go viral various times for the hate that he spewed, as someone who, when I was in the classroom, had to counter students who were entrenched in his dogma at a time, before I even knew who he truly was, as someone who had to talk to students about going to these youth seminars that he was having at a time, and I guess he was probably at the time only about 22 or so. He is someone who has always, I don't want to say puzzled me, but I believe that it's always been interesting to see his rise, because I felt like it always it revealed it revealed just how fragile, not just how fragile our institutions are, but how much miseducation has worked in this country. Because for someone to be able to speak that way at such a young age and to have such a grand platform is very, very troubling at the age of 31. And I bring this up in comparison so much because I want us to really reflect on it. As someone who was taught growing up that what Dr. King did up until the point of his assassination was enough, it is particularly interesting to see these cycles of racism continue to strike hold in America, because and if everybody really dissects how they were taught, particularly in my generation, we stopped having conversations about race and racism in history after Dr. King's assassination, which was always odd to me, because it wasn't as if he died a natural death and all of the policy that came after was just a way to pay tribute to what he did. He was assassinated at a young age of 39. And we were under the assumption that things just magically got better. We often fast forward to Barack Obama's election. We might sometimes make a short stop in the Million Man March in 1995. We might talk a little bit about Rodney King, but we were just under this illusion that, well, at this point, all we have to do is try our best individually. And if that's the case, and if the fact is, which we know to be a lie, that history gets better or things get better with time, then how do we have someone who was 31, who was, I believe, born in 1993? How do we have someone who spews that much hatred towards another group of people who, one thing we don't really talk about enough is the fact that he was born and raised in a northern suburb of Chicago, just like someone else that he has often been in conversation with, Nick Fuentes, a suburb of Chicago. What is happening in these communities to create someone who would spew such vitriol? And how is it that our youth are so impressionable to believe the things he was saying? When I found out about this, I was in Lima, Ohio, preparing to speak. It was an hour and a half before I was preparing to speak. And it caught me off guard, because not just because of the way in which he was assassinated, but the broader context of where we are right now. I don't know if people truly understand what this can and will ignite within this country. To your point of why white America, or the question of why they have not had a Martin Luther King, is because in their eyes, and this is going to be really interesting for a lot of people with my framing, we are often taught that when we break up our history, that we are playing the victim card. But it's truly white America who often plays that role. It is projected towards us. But it is really what I'm learning as I live through this experience and I teach. Everything that white America, of course, we're talking as an entity, the media and these political figures that subscribe to this, everything they project towards us, the violence, or call us lazy, right? The criminality they put on us is all a projection of how they feel about themselves, and in some ways the truth of their history. They have been taught then that any form of equity or fairness is subjugation. And he speaks to that viscerally. And it truly enrages a large segment of this population to think that they would have to share resources that they stole. I was just writing an article before we got on here on my Substack, and I was reflecting on how on this day in 1963, we know the Birmingham church bombing occurred. And the context of that bombing occurring was the fact that due to folks like Dr. King and Reverend Shuttlesworth, there was a passage of civil rights legislation in that city that integrated that city. And how does the Klan respond? This response is not just to integration. We have to break it down. This is a response to being told that you must share what you stole. Think about how diabolical that is. And you bomb a church, killing 4 kids. What you spoke about with the chapters emerging from this, I saw something about his social media platforms doubling in size, and he was already a huge figure. He is not a Dr. King, but they will turn him into their version, meaning that they will try to erect statues. They were flying the flags at half staff. They will try to make a holiday.
Let me touch upon that right there. Let me stay right there. I want that to be really clear today. When I added Rosa Parks' statue to Statuary Hall, I convinced all of the Congressional Black Caucus to sign a piece of legislation that would allow that statue to take place. All the Democrats joined, and ultimately the Republicans joined. The House of Representatives passed that legislation. It then went to the Senate. Mitch McConnell calls my office and said he wanted to offer his own version of the legislation. I went and met with Mitch McConnell, and I said, Mitch, listen. History must reflect that Black people in Congress had enough sense to honor Rosa Parks. So I have to insist upon our legislation. This can't be the Mitch McConnell Rosa Parks statue. That's not going to work. It has to be exactly the way in which it originated. Mitch said, would you be willing to accept a friendly amendment? I said, what is it? Mitch said, going forward, no statue could enter into Statuary Hall but for 10 years after the person is deceased. When John McCain died, there was a movement afoot to name a new building, one of the old Senate buildings, after John McCain. I called Mitch McConnell shortly after John McCain's death, and I reminded him of the friendly amendment that we accepted, that they cannot change the name of that building because we agreed that the person should be deceased at least 10 years so that the American people could reflect upon their legacy before they advanced such a project. The building was not named John McCain, and they accepted the rationale behind the amendment that I accepted to the Rosa Parks legislation. Now they're prepared to bypass the Rosa Parks legislation and that agreement and add Charlie Kirk to the statuary collection in the capital of the United States. But that's not all. To Ernest Krim's point, just as there is a Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in the middle of every major municipality in the United States honoring Dr. King, just as sure as I am sitting here, there's going to be a Charlie Kirk Boulevard. And the Martin Luther King Boulevard reflects usually diverse communities, but certainly Black communities. But once they start erecting Charlie Kirk Boulevards from city to city and town to town, it will be a symbol that only whites only should be able to live on these streets, or you are consciously moving into a community named after someone whose life was lost for white minority rights. White minority rights. Not only flags flown at half-staff, but the idea of a national holiday like Martin Luther King Jr.'s for Charlie Kirk. The celebration of white minority rights and the idea that, quote unquote, he died for us. Now, Martin Luther King Jr. in this final statement, final testimony of his life on April 3rd, offers an inclusive and broad vision of America and a promised land that all Americans, that all of God's children were entitled to. And just minutes before the death of Charlie Kirk, no such vision of an inclusive America, the vitriol of Black women and gangs and unqualified Black airline pilots were some of the statements that he was making in the final days, months, and years of his life. And yet the nation might pause to honor him in this way, to permanently enfranchise Charlie Kirk boulevards and statues throughout our nation, and highways and interstates, to remember the life that he lived as a permanent fixture in the American psychology. We have 2 minutes before we come forward. Mr. Krim, thank you for raising that point.
My reflection really quick is from 1619 to 1968, white folks had their version of freedom of speech. And we know what their freedom of speech is vastly different what it means for us. It's us to truly be who we are. But for them, it has been the freedom to oppress. And Donald Trump awoke that older version that we tried to put to death. And Charlie Kirk is going to be a symbol for that for a new generation.
There's no doubt in my mind that that's true. And I am deeply concerned about that for all Americans, because the juxtaposition of the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. deserves its own space. I should also share with you that when the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday passed, a number of states on their side of town, while we're celebrating the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr. in those states, many of those states are celebrating Confederate holiday, the birth of the Confederacy, Confederates Day, rather than honor Martin Luther King Jr. as Americans together. Since the inception of his holiday, there are states on the books who allow, if you will, non-supportive white Americans to have a holiday on the other side, ignoring the very fact that Martin Luther King gave his life for all. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. More with Ernest Krim when we come forward.
The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former President Trump says he plans to deploy National Guard troops to Memphis, Tennessee as part of his push against crime and illegal immigration. In a Fox News interview, Trump described Memphis as deeply troubled and claimed the city's Democratic mayor, Paul Young, who was black, supported the move.
I'm certainly not happy about the National Guard.
Mayor Young is pushing back, saying he never asked for troops to patrol the city and does not believe their presence would reduce crime. Cosby Show star Felicia Rashad honored her television son Malcolm Jamal Warner during the Emmys in memoriam segment. Warner, who played Theo Huxtable, drowned earlier this year in Costa Rica. Rashad said he remains forever in our hearts. And former Morgan State University president Dr. Earl Richardson has died at 81. He led the HBCU from 1984 to 2010, transforming it into a doctoral research institution and expanding programs and facilities. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Do you really know what's in your tap water? LifeSource believes your water should support your health, not work against it. Upgrade your water with a LifeSource whole house water system during September's Double Dip promo. Call 800-WATER-99 or visit lifesourcewater.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Impressive victory for the Rams Sunday at Tennessee. The Rams improved to 2-0 with a dominant 33-19 win. 5 sacks for the Rams defense. Quarterback Matthew Stafford had a strong day with 298 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. The Chargers are in Vegas tonight to take on the Raiders. 7 p.m. kickoff on ESPN. The UCLA administration has seen enough. After only 15 games as UCLA's head coach, Deshaun Foster was fired Sunday morning after the Bruins' 0-3 start this season. The 35-10 loss at home to New Mexico Friday night was the last straw for the administration. New Mexico was picked to finish 11th in the Mountain West Conference. Foster was 5-10 in his short role as head coach. Bruins assistant Tim Skipper will be the interim coach the rest of the season. The Dodgers beat San Francisco 10-2. They lead San Diego by 2.5 in the NL West. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent. And the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got right.
Hey, we all got right.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
It all comes down to this, folks.
Yep, the entire season is on the line.
But my throat has officially thrown in the towel. Sounds like you need Vicks VapoCool drops. They're max strength and vaporize sore throat pain.
Whoa! These VapoCool drops hit fast.
Speaking of fast, did you just see that play?
Yeah, he vaporized that ball.
That pun should have come with a penalty.
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest in this hour is Mr. Ernest Grimm III, an Emmy-nominated producer, public teacher, anti-racist educator, and hate crime victor who uses Black historical narratives to empower and educate through a culturally equitable lens. Mr. Grimm, a South Side of Chicago native and University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana graduate, is a former high school history teacher, educator of 12 years, who now also advocates for social justice issues and teaches Black history to the world through social media with a platform that reaches roughly 4 million people each month. Ernest, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks again for having me, brother.
I want to hang around this traumatic experience that human beings suffer in the moment of trauma. When you think about, and you probably by definition would not remember, but some of us who are just young enough to remember, the traumatic effect of men returning home from the Vietnam War, who had seen some of the most horrific scenes in human history. The treatment of human beings who were different than them, who were victims of war, victimized by communism, but also victimized by America's aggression in that part of the world, victimized by both. Poor Vietnamese people victimized on both sides of the ledger. Other men and women who've experienced wars. Many of us are very familiar, while we may not have experienced ourselves, with what Jewish people went through in the Holocaust and the traumatic experience that it was then, which we cannot even imagine, and the traumatic experience that many descendants of those who are Holocaust survivors experience today. To be human is to experience trauma. Trauma. Traumatic experiences that change our worldviews and change our thinking. I was 3 years old when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, but to this day, the trauma of it is something that my parents still experience. They're in their 80s. My dad's 84 years old on October 8th. My mother, 84 years old on March 17th of next year. Traumatic existence, largely because of the context in which they were raised. And I don't want to speak past, Ernest, the trauma that thousands of young students in Utah experienced on that day. Those firsthand witnesses, those who share a firsthand account, those who showed up to hear what Mr. Kirk had to say, which was his First Amendment right, to be on that campus and as an American and as a human being to say whatever he wants on his mind. And that's why I wouldn't have minded debating Charlie Kirk. I don't wish him any harm, or anyone I've ever served with in the Congress who had different points of view than I have. I wouldn't wish them that. I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy death. In fact, I don't even use the term enemy. I call them frenemies. And I would have loved to have had Charlie Kirk on the Jesse Jackson Jr. show to debate, to discuss. I've had Michael Cohen on this show, and we don't agree on an awful lot of things, but we do agree on some things because I give human beings the opportunity to change. The 31-year-old Charlie Kirk that was, I give the 32-year-old, the 33-year-old, the 34-year-old Charlie Kirk that may have been the benefit of the doubt. I have no choice as a Christian but to give him the benefit of the doubt. That if I could have exposed him to more people and tried to work with him and tried to convince him of what his language and what his words and ideas were doing to people, he might have better understood. I believe in the core of my religion that we have to give people chances. Give them chances and give them chances. How often shall I forgive my neighbor? Until 70 times? No, until 70 times 70. 490 times is a lot of forgiveness that has to be passed out. So I have to work with this idea that somehow when we lose these figures in young ages, they are permanently locked in time, locked in space. They do not age. And what they stood for can become idealized, idolized. It can become worshiped. It can add a new definition of truth, even if it were not true, to the body politic. Is there any concern, Ernest, from the perspective of a thinking millennial like you are, that you are looking at a fundamental paradigm shift in the interpretation of reality?
Oh, definitely. If we can just reflect on a moment, I know I'm a millennial, of course, but I'm right next to Gen Z, and I taught Gen Z, and much of how they feel about the world is not based on real life experiences, or I should say lived experiences. Much of how they feel about the world is based on what they've seen. So there were 3,000 children there, young students, young adults in the audience when he was assassinated. But there's also millions of us who probably scrolled past it, unknowingly viewed it. I myself did not see it, but I know a lot of people who did. I received emails from the superintendent from my school's district because a lot of kids did see it and were talking about it at very young ages. So there's secondary trauma. And what happens is if you are someone who maybe out of curiosity at 10, 11, 12 clicked on a video of Charlie Kirk, and I'm telling you this from my own experience on the other side of the paradigm, that one video, and especially depending on how long you watch it, means that you will be fed an endless amount of videos like that, whether it be from him or other people with smaller platforms who think the same. Now, juxtapose that to the fact that you are living your life on this device. You're not going outside as much because the very nature of the media and social media has like propagated this notion of the world is a hostile, dangerous place everywhere you go. So you feel more safety having your child scroll online without any parameters at all, though. And your child, who could be white, but there are black folks who not only supported him, but agreed with the things he said. I've seen it for myself on my timeline. This is the rabbit hole we go down, and there is no Charlie Kirk without social media, and not just social media, the endless scroll features, the dooms scroll feature, the algorithms that we have. He is not possible, in my opinion, in any other era but this. Just like my story is not possible without the utilization of social media for something positive. So the children there, what I'm concerned about is the kids who saw that there, I'm almost certain, and I can't say this for everybody, but I believe the majority of the people there will be radicalized even further to the right of where they were already, because they don't see the flaw. And I'm talking about his supporters. They see that he was killed from their impression because of his freedom of speech, his free speech. And that is something that is very paramount to this society. And like I said before the break, it means completely different things for us, though. Our freedom of speech is for equity. It's to be treated as human beings. Their freedom, not just of speech, freedom of expression and action, as almost always for the majority of their community, has led to our subjugation. So when they see somebody demonized for that, it almost feels as though they cannot practice that anymore. For a young group of people who are not fully developed yet, who are living, and these folks are in Utah, so what is it, 1% black? They are not exposed to other people. Again, they're forming their opinions on people in life based on what they've seen online. They came there because they saw him online. How many of them even know us or any so-called lefties to form an accurate opinion on who we are as people?
Ernest, my mother once told me, and I move to our break right now. My mother once told me that you have the right to freedom of speech in my house, but you do not have the right to your teeth if you speak out of turn. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. More with Ernest Krim when we come forward on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm LA City Councilmember Curran Price, inviting you to the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September the 20th, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. We've got 4 pavilions, 3 stages of live music, plus food, fun, and a marketplace all along historic Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Ave. Our featured acts this year are Gregory Porter, Pancho Sanchez, and Jasmine Horn at the 30th anniversary of the Central Avenue Jazz Festival, Saturday, September 20th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. along Central Avenue between MLK Boulevard and Vernon Avenue. Come out and bring the whole family because this legendary celebration is free. For more information, go to centralavjazzfest.com. I'm LA Councilmember Curran Price, and I absolutely approve this message.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you that we keep us safe. Every girl deserves a chance to shine. That's the belief behind Forgiving for Living, Inc. Since 1999, this organization has been empowering at-risk girls ages 13 to 18, helping them overcome behavioral and mental health challenges. Founder Wendy Gladney's personal journey inspired the mission to give girls hope and purpose through the power of forgiveness. Through their ambassador program, workshops, and annual conference, Forgiving for Living has touched over 3,000 young lives, providing mentoring, life skills, training, and tools for building self-esteem and confidence. You can make a difference. Visit forgivingforliving.org to donate, volunteer, become a mentor, or find help for a young girl in need. Forgiving for Living, Inc., building brighter futures for young girls. Visit forgivingforliving.org today. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our program today is largely inspired by the conversation on leadership that Tavis Smiley had in the previous hour, and I'm very grateful that Ernest Krim, my favorite millennial, Emmy Award-winning artist, history teacher, a man who has more than 4 million followers and subscribers, and is making a pathway for a leadership style that I am very grateful and appreciative of. It is certainly an inclusive leadership style, but he's a young, sharp African-American man. This is his program, What's Love Got to Do with It? And I have a couple more questions for you, Ernest, in this final segment. I'm wondering, will people lose even more sensitivity and empathy and sympathy in this hour? Charlie says he hated the word empathy. And how can we have community without it? And where is room for forgiveness in, if you will, in Charlie Kirk's America?
Wow, that's a profound question. I think leading up to what happened to Charlie Kirk, we were already largely desensitized to these instances of public spectacle of death or assassination. When you speak about Dr. King's assassination, for instance, I feel like in our generation, it's different because we have not seen a political figure who stood up for us of that magnitude who met that fate. But we have seen regular folks who are more reflective of our experience, reflective of what we can relate to, people who were just minding their business. I can recall when people first started to get camera phones, like Oscar Grant in Oakland, seeing that happen. And then we hear about Trayvon, we hear about Mike Brown, we see Eric Gardner, we see what happened. We saw Tamir Rice at 12, and those hit us like punches to the gut each time. And we've always had as a community that empathy for all people, but especially our own experience. And when we saw those things happen and we were pleading for help, and this, if people can remember, I know it seems like ages ago, but this is the origin of the affirmation, Black Lives Matter. I know it's an organization, I know it's a hashtag, but at its core, it's an affirmation. It's a declaration and a proclamation that we want to be true, because we realize that although we believe it to be true, it is not actualized that way. Black Lives Matter. See me as a person, treat me as a person. We've seen ourselves get ridiculed. There's a Gen Z historian named Khalil Green who has an amazing video about this, about how whenever this would happen, our deaths, our murders were mocked and ridiculed. Now, we know it did not just start in the 2010s, but we were able to see it as a broad display, because lynchings were mocked. Our body parts were souvenirs, postcards, for instance. So I would honestly say that I don't know if the broader white America can lose empathy that was not instilled in them towards our existence already. I think there would be less of that, because regardless of who the perpetrator is and his views, which remain to be seen, we are still viewed as the instigators of this. I'm concerned, though, I will say that in this moment, if we don't use this as a way to continue to galvanize our community, galvanize what it truly means to express ourselves freely, and reintroduce what it truly means to debate, then we'll lose something that's vital in this moment. Because even the framing, I saw somebody talk about this, even the framing of him having public debates is really wrong, because for one, he lied, but he did not have anybody there to fact check. his fallacious statements.
let me ask this question of you, Ernest, because I leave enough room for you to have to close out on a word of hope. What signal to a new generation of Americans will the inevitable Charlie Kirk Elementary School, public school mean? The inevitable Charlie Kirk High School mean? The inevitable Charlie Kirk Boulevard mean? Don't those potential symbols mean some of us are not welcome? That those of us who graduate from those schools, if we are even allowed to attend, that we're unqualified, that our very existence raises the perception that just because we graduated, it means that we need to have our degrees or our very existence recertified one more time just to be an airline pilot? What does the signal send? And what is the spirit energy that flows from the martyrization, if you will, of the theology, the philosophy, and the politics of Charlie Kirk?
I think it's exactly what you said. It reveals to us that we aren't welcome. And the very fact that that can and will become a thing in certain parts of this country is absolutely deplorable and disgusting to me, but it's true. I think it means the same as a Columbus statue, George Washington. Now we know he did not personally engage in the actions that they did, but he spewed the same rhetoric. And truthfully, if in that time period would have been the one who espoused that same rhetoric. I think what's also troubling about what I'm seeing about how he's turning into a martyr for certain groups is many people aren't accompanying that with actual quotes that would prove that he's worthy of this. They're just saying he was a Christian man. They're just saying because he dressed nicely, because he was clean cut, because he fit that image of masculinity, I guess, or male whiteness that America loves to eat up. But what did he actually say that was the equivalent of the love of Jesus Christ? What did he say that was so uplifting and worthy of being placed on a pedestal such as this? That's what we have to, those are the questions that we have to continue to go towards. And to see that he is being celebrated and romanticized in this manner, again, reveals the lack of educational progress that the broader community has made since the conversations of taking down Confederate statues that are going right back up in this moment.
Let me add to that because I worked really hard to change the story at battlefields across the country, but where the Union met the Confederacy. And I insisted that they tell the language at these battlefields that it just wasn't the Confederates that came over this hill and the Union came this way with this general, and then they did left flanks and right flanks, and the hill that these guys tried to conquer, this group got slaughtered versus that group, which is the story they were telling at the battle sites. I asked the question, why are they fighting in the first place? Why don't we share this story at the battlefields? And what I found was a whitewashing of the story of the Civil War itself, where villains who probably should have met a official fate from the federal government and from the American people for their behavior in disunion, including but not limited to treason, were ultimately forgiven, just like the January 6th insurrectionists, and allowed to continue to participate in the society. And that's why you saw on January 6th Confederate flags running through the capital of the United States, and why the president of the United States at the time did nothing about stopping that process. The complete rewriting of history has led to a historical negative that is simply, Brother Krim, not true. And so when you do this with a figure like Mr. Kirk, and others say what he really stood for was the First Amendment, you mean like more than George Washington or more than Thomas Jefferson or more than those who actually added the First Amendment to the Constitution? He really stood for it. And that means he's got the right to call you the N-word. He's got the right to call you anything he wants to call you. You think you can leave that conversation with your teeth? With your teeth? Of course, this means discord for another 100 years or 200 years until America comes to terms with the reckoning of the fact that we are all brothers and sisters, and in this American experiment, we have a right to live together. Ernest Krim, about 2 minutes for your word.
I would like to quote, like Reverend Howard Owens was quoting. I believe that it's important to reflect on James Baldwin's words. We can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of humanity and right to exist. I think that we have to, in this moment, reflect on foundationally, what will it truly mean to make this place better for all of us? As an educator by trade, I don't think things can change foundationally until we truly investigate our educational programs across the entire country. The way he thought, the way people like him think, and the way people are increasingly thinking is a byproduct of that and that propaganda. We have to investigate that. We have to have policy that takes care of all people and provides living wages. Like, these are just a few things that we should all be working towards to make sure that things can get better for us moving forward. But things cannot change unless we can have respectable conversations rooted in truth. And that does not change until we investigate the very lies that we are told and taught to be the truth in this country. I have to remain optimistic. I have to remain hopeful, because I have to believe that there's something better than this for us. And it's because we're all collectively working towards doing this together.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. Our very special contributor, Ernest Krim, represents our millennials. Ernest, thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks again for having me.
More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Former President Trump says he plans to deploy National Guard troops to Memphis, Tennessee as part of his push against crime and illegal immigration. In a Fox News interview, Trump described Memphis as deeply troubled and claimed the city's Democratic mayor, Paul Young, who was black, supported the move.
I'm certainly not happy about the National Guard.
Mayor Young is pushing back, saying he never asked for troops to patrol the city and does not believe their presence would reduce crime. Cosby Show star Felicia Rashad honored her television son Malcolm Jamal Warner during the Emmys in memoriam segment. Warner, who played Theo Huxtable, drowned earlier this year in Costa Rica. Rashad said he remains forever in our hearts. And former Morgan State University president Dr. Earl Richardson has died at 81. He led the HBCU from 1984 to 2010, transforming it into a doctoral research institution and expanding programs and facilities. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Do you really know what's in your tap water? LifeSource believes your water should support your health, not work against it. Upgrade your water with a LifeSource whole house water system during September's Double Dip promo. Call 800-WATER-99 or visit lifesourcewater.com.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. In our second hour, our guest host and regular contributor, Reverend Terry Hoard Owens, is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, in the United States and Canada. She is the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination and the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination. She earned her bachelor's degree from Harvard University and her MDiv from the University of Chicago Divinity School, where she subsequently served as Dean of Students for 12 years. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. It's always good to be in this conversation. Boy, I wanted to jump in with you and Ernest. That was good. That was good.
I can summon him back from the space in which he exists out there in Radio Land. I know he's not too far away.
Yeah, he's a busy man. He's a busy man. Yeah.
Madam President, your thoughts about the spiritual dynamic of this moment in our nation and the moment of inflection, but also reflection that this moment creates for us.
Yeah. I found it interesting, sort of the energy that has existed within the Christian community, the multicultural community in which I live, to bring forth the humanity of Charlie Kirk, to focus on the idea that no matter what you think or what you've done, you didn't deserve to die. This comes from white people who call themselves Christians, and yet with the countless numbers of Black people who have been killed, children, women, men, from Sandra Bland to George Floyd and beyond. There is no empathy with that idea that no matter what they've done, they did not deserve to die. If that's a Christian value, it's being applied very selectively and narrowly. I have myself not made a statement about Charlie Kirk. And I've seen a lot of people opining on social media about it. I didn't want to make a formal statement about it, in large part because I'm still sorting through my feelings and my thoughts and understanding the role that I play, the platform that I have, and trying to center, first of all, a Christian and a spiritual response. The simple Christian response is that violence is never the answer. We are all made in the image of God, and that dignity must be respected no matter what. When I write Stay at the Table, one of the women who was reading and editing it for me, she said, you need to put something in here about people who can't stay at the table because they are being offended. And in large part in our church, it's usually the LGBTQ community. I think in our denomination, at least, there's a greater sense of agency among Hispanics, Asians, and African Americans, even though we still have a long way to go with those communities. But Christians will name something other than being Black, Asian, or Hispanic when they're trying to counter your right to exist. But when it comes to the LGBTQ community, Christians will deny their very humanity. And so what does it mean to sit at a table where your humanity is being denied? And Baldwin says that's the deal breaker right there. Yeah.
Madam President, I want to dig just a little bit deeper, and I know we'll be coming forward in 2 minutes, and maybe part of this conversation will extend over into our longer segments. You know, when I think about the methodology in Dr. King's experiment that he was advancing, this nonviolent use of boycotting for buses, this withdrawal of enthusiasm, these public protests, it wasn't just about speech. Dr. King believed that the end that he was trying to build in a world house and in this society was pre-existent in the means, that the way in which he conducted the movement allowed whites to spit on him. Our students at North Carolina A&T sat in at lunch counters and they practiced, they trained to be spat on and have ice cream thrown in their face and you name it. And yet something within the oppressor's spirit changed, particularly in the medium of television that was new at the time. People began to realize just how cruel segregation was.
Right.
Our movement wasn't just about the First Amendment to the Constitution, the right to get up and give a speech. We actually gave consideration to the idea that the end that we seek, a multicultural society, is pre-existent in the means, and the way in which we carry out that end mattered how to the means that we chose to employ to bring it into existence, right? So I'm saying that because Charlie said that he believes in guns. He believes that God-given rights are at the end of a gun. And so the end that he seeks is pre-existent in violence.
Yeah.
Gun is what is necessary to secure these rights. Defending yourself is what's necessary to secure these rights. And that pre-existence is fundamentally different than the approach of Martin Luther King Jr. And I really, really believe that has to be elevated. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. We're moving mountains on this Monday with Reverend Dr. Teresa Hord Owens. Dr. Owens is the president and general minister of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States. We are on KBLA Talk 1580. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. More when we come forward.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte. Let's preserve Black land stories before they're lost forever. I want to personally invite you to be a part of something historic. As journalist in residence for the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, I've joined forces with powerhouse attorney and social justice champion George Fothery, the man who helped make history by delivering justice to the Bruce family in Manhattan Beach, securing the first known return of land unjustly taken from Black owners by a local government. That victory was monumental, but it was just the beginning. For generations, Black families have acquired land through grit, faith, and determination, only to lose it through violence, legal loopholes, forced sales, and systematic racism. What's been taken goes far beyond dirt and deeds. It's the erasure of wealth, identity, and legacy. That's why we've launched the Black Land Lost Narrative Archive Project, a national effort to collect, protect, and preserve the stories of Black land lost before they're buried, forgotten, or erased altogether. Because there's power in telling Black stories, there is resistance in remembering, and there's justice in being seen and heard. This is where you come in. We're inviting you to be a part of this historic Black narrative archive. If you or someone you know has experienced land loss, displacement, or forced property sales, your story deserves to be heard and remembered. Your story belongs in this archive. Your truth matters not just to your family, but to our collective future. Visit blacklandlost.org today. Fill out our simple intake form and add your voice to the National Archive of Remembrance, Resilience, and Reckoning. Let's make these stories live on, not in whispers, but on the record. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Dr. Nicolai Corte, and as always, we welcome your feedback.
Ready to order?
Yes. We're earning unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. So let's just get one of everything.
Everything?
Fire everything. The Capital One Saver card is at table 27 and they're earning unlimited 3% cash back.
Yes, Chef! This is so nice.
Had a feeling you'd want 3% cash back on dessert.
Ooh, tiramisu.
Earn unlimited 3% cash back on dining and entertainment with the Capital One Saver card. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Let's go!
You're still grooving, still connecting, still loving, still turning up, still thriving. You still got it, but your immune system, it weakens as you age. That's where vaccines come in. They help train and strengthen your immune response to fight off respiratory illnesses like flu, pneumococcal pneumonia, RSV, or COVID-19. Ask your doctor or pharmacist which vaccines you need. Book in minutes at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Terry Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. Elected in 2017, Reverend Hord Owens was re-elected to a second term as General Minister and President in 2023. Her ministry actively reflects the Disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. Her exhortation to the church is, let's be the church we say we are. It is in being who we say we are that we are actively bear witness to God's limitless love for all. Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, our guest. Welcome forward, Madam President.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. It is always good to have this conversation with you on Mondays.
So, Madam President, I want to pick back up on the question that I raised in the first segment. And of course, you have so much time on this show to respond. And I want you really to take your time in any way that you want to express yourself. And please do so. Madam President, since his death, Mr. Kirk's organization, Turning Point, has now received more than 32,000 requests for college campus chapters of his organization, Turning Point. As you know, and I shared with you in the previous hour, that Christianity really is a thinking person's religion, in that the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth, while it ended in his lifetime on a cross, and obviously our belief in the resurrection, one could arguably say, and argue, I think, effectively theologically, that his ministry was tragically interrupted by the cross as well. There's so much more we could have learned from Jesus of Nazareth had he not been crucified. We just don't know. It's left to us these last 2,025 years to kind of figure out where the religion is going and to apply experiments. So Dr. King says that because of this dynamic, the end, what kind of world we want to build, we have to give thought pre-existent to the means that we use to turn enemies into friends, to overcome people who oppress us, to find ways that little black boys and little white boys and little white girls and black girls can hold hands in a commonality and brotherhood and march together. This is an experiment, Dr. King is saying, even in our Christian faith, to try and go somewhere, a society where we can all live and experience the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven together. Now, pre-existent in Mr. Kirk's theology is this idea that the end, God's given rights, are secured by the Second Amendment, that they are secured by violence, that they are secured at the point of a gun, that the end that he seeks to achieve is pre-existent in a rifle. It is pre-existent in a gun. I find that deeply, that's like saying that the end of Christianity is pre-existent in a Roman Empire, a Roman soldier's sword or spear. Help me, Madam President. Help all of us.
You talk about, religion being a thinking person's religion. This is a clear, I think, huge signal that Christian nationalism, white supremacy, Trumpism, even this conservative movement that people are ascribing to Charlie Kirk, the goal is not thought, because if the goal were thought and discernment, they would not be so averse to the naming of truth or the studying of truth and history. And if you are a Christian, you start one place, I think, and I've written about this. Jesus said the greatest commandment is to love God and love your neighbor. And he also told his disciples, they will know you are Christians. They will know you are my disciples by the way you love each other. So love each other in the same way I love you. And Dr. King's the movement that began to erupt and drafted him to be the leader, the movement that your father led so ably and well in, was grounded so deeply in this moral understanding of all humanity having been created by God, of the rights of human dignity, the role of nonviolence as the way of God, right? And so it was grounded in a moral analysis. What you have on the with Charlie Kirk, if you're focusing on the Second Amendment, the individual, there is no way that you privilege the individual over community and line it up with Christian theology. I just don't know how you do that, because if you acknowledge that everyone is made in the image of God, you have to come to some sense that you're not the one who gets to decide whether or not they are human or not. So those who follow have to understand that. So he's skipped a step. He is building a religion. I wouldn't say that it is grounded in theology or in Christian theology. I wrote a little social media post back when the Pulse nightclub shootings happened, and I was not in this role. I was pastoring a white church in Downers Grove, Illinois, and we had just become an open and affirming church, a church that had gone through the discernment that everyone's created in God's image, and we made a statement that we welcomed all, regardless of not only race and gender identity, but sexual orientation. That was unanimously voted. And I said, if we start with love, there are only certain paths we can go down. So for me, where you start your theology will dictate where you can go. Your understanding of who is God. Is God a God of love? Is God a God of grace and mercy? Or is God a God who simply stands with me? And that's what I claim to condone my view of the world. And if my view of the world is only about me, it fails the Christianity text. Now, my tradition is very, we don't like to critique people and say that you're not Christian. But I will say that unless you start with love, you're not Christian. So if you're talking about, oh, I need a gun because what did Kirk call them in one place? These third worlders are coming in and disrupting our communities. So we need guns to protect ourselves. The lies and the hate that spew forth fly in the face of anything that Jesus has said or done. And so when you start there out of your own selfishness and need to establish yourself, this same dynamic has happened over and over in our history because we've never dealt with the issue of black and white. You're familiar with the doctrine of discovery that basically said in the times of exploration by Spain and England, and they were looking for this land of spices. Christopher Columbus stumbled upon. He was trying to go to what we now know as India. He wasn't trying to get here, and stumbled upon it. But he claimed land in the name of Queen Isabella. They claimed, and they were theologians who framed this understanding that if land is not Christian, then the people are not humanly worthy to own it. And so we as Christians get to take from them what is theirs. That's not a theology that's grounded in love. That's a theology that's grounded in a sense of supremacy and a sense of the rights of our community over the rights of yours. And so these thousands of chapters of young people who are springing up are being fed not truth and not history. They're not even really being fed what I would call a cogent theological understanding. We shroud a whole lot of stuff in Christianity without paying attention to the Bible or what Jesus said and taught. One of the best reviews of my book came from a publication called Word and Way. Brian Kaler is the editor, and a guy that I know within our church who's a theologian. He said the interesting thing about Reverend Owen's vision for the church is that She has an orthodox theology. I'm not sure what he meant by orthodox theology, but it leads to a vision of inclusion and social justice. I believe firmly that if we really get inside what Jesus was trying to say, it's not just about personal salvation and personal piety. It's not just about saying the words and coming to a program on Sunday. It's about changing the world so that it can look like the vision that we see in Isaiah 11, so that we can reflect this command to love each other, because God has made us all to love each other as Jesus loved us. That should lead us to not wanting to use guns to keep people out of our communities, but trying to make sure that those people have whatever they need to flourish and survive. And that's the sadness around this, that Christianity is being so distorted and it's so little understood. I'm telling my people, you got to equip yourself spiritually and biblically in order to stand up against all this nonsense. So if you're mad at me, I'm sorry. If you're mad at me because I didn't eulogize Charlie Kirk, I'm not going to eulogize Charlie Kirk. I'm to eulogize literally means to speak well of. His value, you can't even really say that he, as Ernest was saying, he didn't really debate. He would say, oh, prove me wrong, but he didn't have fact checkers. He wasn't engaged in a traditional full exchange of ideas. And the ideas that he did espouse that went unchecked were those of hatred and vitriol. And that we cannot elevate or mythologize that.
Madam President, I think about the early work of Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, his studies during the Holocaust as a Holocaust survivor. I think about the witness of Bonhoeffer under similar conditions and holding on to his faith in spite of. Think about some of the work of Barth and some of the early theologians of that mid-20th century period, where the world itself was at an inflection and a turning point, if you will, in terms of what we define and how we should define humanity and human existence, and quite frankly, the world's collective response to the Holocaust, to what was happening, to the genocide and the extermination of Jewish people by Hitler's regime and Mussolini's fascism that was so devastating. Some of the early things that also emerge are the otherization of people.
Yes.
They saw those people as those people.
Those people.
Or maybe those rather than even people. They just saw them as the other. So here in the United States, we have this illegal immigrant, which is anything but a human being. An illegal alien is from some planet that doesn't have rights and is here and should be just rounded up and shipped away. Or Donald Trump says that from the moment we were born, we are criminal. And it's just a matter of time before we become criminals. So let's deal with it right now. There is an otherization that's taking place in the United States.
Yeah.
That, at least from my perspective, Madam President, goes at the heart of whether you believe in Christian values or Judeo-Christian values. It just goes at the heart of anything civilized, any kind of civilization. And to be candid, so much of the last 2025 years of anything that even symbolizes civilization has its grounding in the ministry of Jesus of Nazareth, whether it's Christian or not. Whatever you want to call the religion, some of the tenets of a civilized society have their roots in that very nascent, young, and very short ministry that ended in crucifixion. Madam President, these are difficult hours for the church.
Oh, it's extremely difficult hours, because in part what's happening, and this is how we know that our values are not aligned in the way that they should be, is that on one hand, we can just very objectively, no matter who the person is, abhor the violence and abhor the taking of a human life. That is simply religion or no religion, right? Most of us understanding common law, that's just sort of core, essential to even how we organize ourselves as societies. But unfortunately, the conversation is not being held with a certain degree of honesty in the white mainline church because there is this divisiveness around the conflation of civic religion with Christianity. Civic religion, the waving of the flag, this idea that, the heart of Christian nationalism, a good American believes we ought to wave that flag. A good American is okay with owning guns. A good American believes you can't tell me whether or not my family gets immunizations or not. A good American believes in that level of individual freedom, as opposed to the way of Christ that calls us to bear in mind the others that are in our community, so that our freedoms, my high school teacher used to say, your freedom ends where mine begins. The moment you start infringing rather on my ability to exercise my freedoms, then we have a problem. The moment that you start articulating yourself as the chosen over against me, then you violated both the civil religion that Americans like, and sadly, we don't understand how this violates Christianity. So in my space, I'm trying to articulate the difference in this very clear Christian theology that's under attack. And people will say that because you name that he spoke hatred and evil, how can you speak that? The man is dead. Oh my gosh, we can't speak ill of him. But if we tell the truth, we're on solid ground. People don't want to tell the truth because it violates these understandings.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens. More with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. President Trump is criticizing New York Governor Kathy Hochul for endorsing Zohran Mamdani for mayor, calling it a shocking and bad move for the city. Hochul backed Mamdani in a New York Times op-ed, praising his affordability platform, but noting she doesn't share all of his views.
I believe that we need someone who's going to be open-minded and optimistic.
Trump is signaling support for Andrew Cuomo and reportedly offered current Black Mayor Eric Adams a role in his administration if he drops out of the race. UCLA has fired head football coach Deshaun Foster, who is Black, after an 0-3 start capped by a home loss to New Mexico. Tim Skipper will take over as interim coach. And Serena and Venus Williams are launching a new podcast called Stockton Street, named after their childhood street in Compton. Debuting Wednesday on X, the first episode was filmed at Arthur Ashe Stadium before the U.S. Open, with the sisters interviewing each other. Arthur Ashe Stadium before the U.S. Open, with the sisters interviewing each other. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Do you really know what's in your tap water? LifeSource believes your water should support your health, not work against it. Upgrade your water with a LifeSource whole house water system during September's Double Dip promo. Call 800-WATER-99 or visit lifesourcewater.com.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Is this the title?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The firing of UCLA head football coach Deshaun Foster on Sunday was not a surprise. Things were heading in this direction from the first game of the season when UCLA was blown out at home by Utah 43-10. In the Bruins' 0-3 start, they were outscored 108-43. In Friday's loss to New Mexico, they were outscored 21-0 in the fourth quarter. In that game, the Bruins gave up 298 yards rushing and committed 13 penalties for 116 yards. 13 penalties is an indication that Foster had trouble maintaining discipline on his team. These are not the kind of numbers that will make a team competitive in the Big Ten Conference, which has 7 teams ranked in the top 25. Foster's dismissal reduces the number of black head football coaches in the Big Ten to 3. James Franklin at number 2 Penn State, Sharon Moore at Michigan, and Mike Loxley at Maryland. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, aka the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
No warrant, no key. My privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all got rights.
Hey, we all got rights.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
It all comes down to this, folks.
Yep, the entire season is on the line. But my throat has officially thrown in the towel.
Sounds like you need Vicks VapoCool drops. Their max strength and vaporize sore throat pain.
Whoa! These VapoCool drops hit fast.
Speaking of fast, did you just see that play?
Yeah, he vaporized that ball.
That pun should have come with a penalty.
Vaporize sore throat pain with Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Dr. Teresa Howard Owens. Reverend Owens is the General President of the Disciples of Christ Church. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to Moving Mountain Mondays on your show, on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Oh, it's always good to be here. Some of the best conversation I have all week is on this show.
It certainly is enlightening. Madam President, I want to talk about the spiritual basis of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, when we named communities and streets after Martin Luther King Jr., we weren't just naming it after the man. We were also naming it after the highest ideals of our faith, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
Every community in the country, there's some expressways, some highways, some dedication to Martin Luther King Jr. and the idea that we can live together. Let me take a mental flight here for a moment and ask you a question. Going forward, what would it mean to live on Charlie Kirk Boulevard?
You know, my body felt a jolt there.
I didn't
No,
mean that.
you know, I think, you know, on one hand, right, you're right, no matter where you go, you're going to see Dr. Martin Luther King Boulevard, Avenue, Place. There's going to be, you know, streets we've referred to all over the country. So over on MLK or here in Chicago, King Drive, right?
Mhm.
It's there. I think the danger of that is that, and we did a great disservice to Dr. King. You know, Michael Eric Dyson years ago in one of his books said, we need to put down I Have a Dream. Let that rest for about 10 years or so and explore Dr. King's other writings. The way that white America sanitized Dr. King. They allowed him to be canonized, but they sanitized him. It's much easier for white America to think about Dr. King as, oh, this preacher who preached love, and they interpret his message as preaching color blindness. That is not what Dr. King preached. He criticized the war in Vietnam. He was working for economic equity. If you read his writings, he was not just a milquetoast evangelical spirit who just said love one another. He believed that love was an action word and that the society needed to order itself according to the way of Jesus in order that we all might flourish. I can't say that about Charlie Kirk. I can't. The people who affirm Charlie Kirk are affirming only what they see themselves in their place. And people can say, oh, well, Terry, you're fighting for identity and you're fighting for the right for your people to have this. There was a young woman who was, they used a clip of her conversation about the Turning Point organization a couple of years ago. She was at one of the conventions. And they were asking her, so what excites you? Why are you here? And she says, well, we're finally the cool kids. And this is about us and our movement. And I don't know what she meant by we're not the cool kids. I don't know how she experienced her sense of the world or the system isn't working for us. One of the huge critiques of Christianity and even the Democratic Party is that we've not been able to really make the message that we really are trying to include the people who are hit by poverty, the people who are whose livelihoods are being destroyed by just the evolution of industry. All of those things are valid. They're valid reasons why people must be angry. And yet they've turned towards the very people who are the causes of the disruption of society. They've turned toward a group of leaders who are oligarchs and who are benefiting off of their own misery. And as I keep saying, it's at the root of it all is this issue of black and white that America has really not gotten beyond. And that's a spiritual problem. You see yourself as more worthy and more valuable than other human beings. That's a really deep spiritual problem.
Madam President, can I continue my intellectual flight?
Yes, please.
What would it mean to attend Charlie Kirk Elementary School or high school?
I think it would mean that our children would be impacted by a continued destruction of history, because the story they would be told about who he was and who he stood for would not be the truth. If the people who have the power to have those schools and streets named are the people who are going to have the power to write the narrative about why we revere him. I went to Woodrow Wilson Junior High School in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Not Woodrow Wilson.
Huh?
Not Woodrow Wilson.
And Woodrow Wilson was academically the best junior high school in the city. Got a great education there. But I didn't learn the real story about Woodrow Wilson.
He was rough now.
He was rough.
He was rough.
What I learned, to make my point, what I learned about Woodrow Wilson was the narrative that caused people to elevate this man. And so we're thinking League of Nations, this great intellectual, public policy person who tried to start this League of Nations idea way before its time. We didn't learn about the fact that he hosted Birth of a Nation in the White House. We didn't read about the fact that he instituted real segregation in the armed forces. We didn't read about or were never even told about all the racist things that he did. And so in my little town of Terre Haute, Indiana, having a Woodrow Wilson Junior High School was presented almost as a progressive person who was being honored. That's what will happen to our children because we won't be able to control the narrative. We'll have to do what Ernest is doing. We'll have to do what my dad did, made me read a book a week, because my dad was constantly trying to counter the false narrative about who I was. He didn't want his children's sense of themselves being shaped by this external narrative. And that's what will happen. People will he'll become some champion of the First Amendment. And that's not what that's not why people liked him. He was responding to the darker angels, not the better angels.
I want to just add that back to Woodrow Wilson for a moment. I attended St. Albans Episcopal High School in Washington, D.C., in large measure because my parents, between 84 and 88, when I was in high school, were working out of Washington. That's where the campaign, its national headquarters was headed. And guess who the only president is buried in the nation's national cathedral? Woodrow Wilson. President Woodrow Wilson is in the center of American Christological thought. And his remains to this day are in the nation's cathedral in Washington, D.C. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with Jesse Jackson Jr. and our very special contributor, Reverend Dr. Teresa Hord Owens. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm still going for it, even with higher stroke risk from atrial fibrillation, an irregular heartbeat not caused by a heart valve problem. Over a 3-year study, Eliquis apixaban tablets reduce stroke risk better than warfarin, and over 97% of Eliquis patients did not experience a stroke. A first stroke occurred in 2.9% of warfarin patients versus 2.3% of Eliquis patients.
Don't stop prescription Eliquis without asking your doctor. Stroke risk may increase. Eliquis can cause serious and potentially fatal bleeding. Don't take if you have an artificial heart valve, abnormal bleeding, or antiphospholipid syndrome. While taking, you may bruise more easily or bleed longer. A spinal injection increases blood clot risk, which may cause paralysis. Get medical help right away for unexpected bleeding or bruising, or back pain, tingling, numbness, muscle weakness, or incontinence. Aspirin products, NSAIDs, SSRIs, SNRIs, and blood thinners increase bleeding risk. Tell your doctor about planned medical or dental procedures. Learn more at Eliquis.com or call 1-855-ELIQUIS.
During this time, it's important for everyone to know your rights. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments in the U.S. Constitution protects every one of us, regardless of immigration status. The 4th Amendment requires a judicial warrant to search your home. The 5th protects your right to remain silent, and the 6th gives you the right to an attorney. Just remember,
no warrant, no key, my privacy. You don't have to speak. No lawyer inside. Don't say a thing. Yeah, we all all got right.
Hey, we all got rights. See website for details. Bills Happen is not a lender and does not make credit decisions. Hey, bills happen. So when you need extra cash fast, go to billshappen.com. Have you been turned down? Are your credit cards maxed out? Do you have bad credit? Go to billshappen.com. All you need is a job and a checking account. You can find a lender and get up to $5,000 cash as early as tomorrow at billshappen.com. Billshappen.com is the smart way to get a personal lender now. So if you need extra money for car repairs, medical bills, family emergencies, whatever you need cash for, go to billshappen.com and you can get the money you need as soon as the next day, up to $5,000. At billshappen.com, our process is safe, secure, and all online. No one to deal with in person. And Bills Happen does not charge you any fees to use our service. It's easy. When you need a lender, just remember, when bills happen, go to billshappen.com. Billshappen.com for the cash you need now. Billshappen.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, or AD. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? You may be able to reduce your risk by managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure, being physically active, eating healthy, and exercising your mind. To learn more about AD, the importance of early diagnosis and intervention, and a potential treatment option, visit treatallzearly.com. That's treatallzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. This is Moving Mountain Mondays, where we talk about the faith not to fall with Reverend Teresa Hord Owens, the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. She's the first person of color and second woman to lead the denomination, the first woman of African descent to lead a mainline denomination. Madam President, welcome forward to the show.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Always good to be here.
About 80% of your congregants are not African American, correct?
Right. That's correct.
Which is a particularly difficult challenge for you in these very, very trying times. I'd certainly like to talk with you about church, spiritual, and moral leadership in the context of constantly changing events. I do want to ask, however, the question about whether or not the idea of building a world house, the idea of building a society where we respect and love each other as neighbors and brothers and sisters and not die apart as fools. If this present movement has made that very lofty, I believe, Christian goal to be far more distant than we ever could have imagined.
In some ways, it is certainly drained, I would say, the hopes and the stamina of those of us who do believe that that is possible. In large part because we've seen our theological and biblical foundations being misinterpreted and misused. Now, granted, my tradition allows for the fact that we all have a right to hear from the Holy Spirit and engage and with Scripture, and that we come to our conclusions. I do still believe, however, there are some basic ground rules that really begin with what you think about God. So if you believe that God is a loving, all-knowing, all-powerful being, then you start there, and then there are certain things that simply don't make sense and don't cohere with your understanding about God. I think we have an opportunity by focusing as much as we can on what I see as the clear truth. If you look at the Bible with a lens of love, there are only certain conclusions that you can draw. Even if you read some of the most violent parts of the Old Testament or in the Psalms, I think if you look at it with the lens that God is a God of love, there's only the way that you can go. We've got to, one of the powerful things that happened at our General Assembly in terms of connecting with millennials, and in this case, some Gen Zers, we had some important social justice resolutions that came before the floor of our assembly, about 3,000 people. We're the only mainline denomination that allows every single congregation to have a vote. So technically, we could have 9,000 people, 10,000 people, if all of our congregations sent someone to vote. One of the young people from Chapman University, which is a school in Southern California that's affiliated with the Disciples of Christ, she said, you're always asking people, you're always asking young people what they care about. This is what we care about. They cared about making the statement about against the war in Gaza, about Israel's violence and genocide and apartheid. They cared about resisting the inhumane disappearing of people under the guise of immigration enforcement. We care about anti-racism in this country. This is what they care about. They don't care about what songs they're singing. Some people will always say, oh, well, the young people want a different kind of music. That's really not what they care about. Sure, if you just have flat hymns being sung every Sunday, I don't care what color you are, flat hymns are not going to move you to a certain extent. But young people care that the church is relevant. And I think we've got to begin to speak and act in such a way that they see that the churches they belong to, the denominations they belong to, are willing to go to the wall and fight for those particular values and to be love in action around those particular values, because they are telling us what we care about. So when I'm concerned about my own hope failing, or just, my response recently has just been to, I can only watch so much news. I found new people like yourself who were in the internet and in digital independent media, who are truth tellers, who are not gated by corporate entities, who want to be sure they have the right message. But I think there is hope in our younger people and in people who really do understand that the message of Jesus is love, and it's not vitriol, and it matters how we conduct ourselves politically to really build the society that Jesus wanted. There's a lot of work to do, no doubt, on that front. And I also think that my church, by having, for decades, having a priority to become an anti-racist church, we've really got to not crack that nut, but we've got to make some progress along those lines. It's not enough for us to train clergy on anti-racism. Until that seeps into the hearts of the people in the pews, we've still got a long way to go. So there are reasons for despair, absolutely. I think Paul writes somewhere in 1 Corinthians, hope does not disappoint. And so I continue to cling to the fact that if it's really grounded in what I believe is the truth of Jesus Christ, that's where I lay my confidence.
I see in listening to you, I see a Birmingham letter from the jail moment where Dr. King is challenging his Christian brethren and sisterin to rise up to the occasion, that let us not found the end for which we seek to be driven by guns and fear of the other and violence as a way of solving our problems. I'm going to have to give that some reflection. Madam President, a word of hope, please.
I think the word of hope again is just that there is those of us who believe in some semblance of the divine, and I would include my Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and Jewish brothers and sisters in this as well, because every religion has some version of the golden rule: love your neighbor as treat them as you would want to be treated. That's just a core human value that's necessary for our survival. And I think some of us have to really be strong enough to speak out. And too many Christians are worried that if I speak out, I will create division. And I think more of us need to be concerned with standing in a truthful place so that the truth of what God is doing can stand. And if things fall, they fall. That's kind of where I am. And it may not seem as hopeful, but I think my resolve is to really lean into the confidence that I have, and things will fall as they will. But I want to be found standing on the Lord's side when it's all said and done.
Amen. I just want to add, given that we have just about a minute and 30 seconds left in our program, I just want to add that, these are difficult days.
Yeah.
But difficult and troublesome and even sad days don't last always. I have seen some profound word on social media offered by some of the greatest ministers and greatest minds of our era, challenging us to think about the hypocrisy of the moment. And I can only in this moment think, Madam President, about Frederick Douglass when he was invited to give a July 4th speech. And he said, now, y'all keep celebrating this holiday now, but I want to tell you how it is interpreted from our perspective. And then he offers the strongest possible admonishment, not only for his present, but for the future of our not paying attention to the truth.
Yes.
And so I see the Birmingham jail moment, that letter to Christian clergymen saying, pump the brakes. I see the Martin Luther King Jr. and Frederick Douglass moment, challenging the nation to its hypocrisy. Do we want a society that elevates the Second Amendment as the foundation of the kind of system that we want to build? We are being given a critical choice at this critical hour. I'm Jesse Jackson. You've been listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our very special guest on Mondays is always Reverend Dr. Teresa Hordorns. More on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. President Trump is criticizing